When the Season 17 changes were first announced, one big thing stuck out to me. SMGs were getting a huge rework to bring them more in line with each other. This was mostly because of how widely the effective range was spread across all the different options. There was one SMG in particular that I just couldn't wait to test. The Huckleberry is easily the most stylish SMG in Destiny, made by the coolest manufacturer, Tex Mechanica. I mean, come on, that reload is just amazing. It's always been a beast in PvE, but in PvP it's had its issues due to the poor range stat. So did Season 17 finally save the Huckleberry? Well, let's talk about it. Before we dive into it, I want to quickly thank the sponsor of this video, which is a really fun game I've been testing for the past few days. Catalyst Black is a brand new team-based shooter game from Super Evil Megacorp. It's available on all mobile devices and aims to be the best battleground shooter of 2022 on mobile. I don't tend to play a whole lot of mobile games, but I do have to admit I've actually had a lot of fun with this one, and I think it has a lot in common with Destiny, so you might like it too. I've been trying to set up my character to be fairly similar to how I play a hunter with a lot of similar abilities. I have a shotgun that deals a ton of damage up close, a dodge roll that can get me out of trouble quickly, a blink strike attack that deals a lot of damage, and of course a flamethrower just because I can have one and it's awesome. It has a few different gameplay modes and each one's pretty interesting. I've spent most of my time in Slayer so far, which is the most straightforward one, and it's really fun for getting used to the movement and the abilities. I found that this game actually has a pretty steep skill gap, and good movement, aiming, and ability usage makes a huge difference in your gameplay results. Just like Destiny, there's a ton of customizable gear and guns that make your character more powerful over time. It also has an item rarity system to give you a good idea of the strongest stuff in your inventory at a glance. Each item slot can be pretty heavily upgraded, so you have a lot of opportunities to make your character more powerful. If you want to give it a try, you can go download Catalyst Black now on any mobile platform. It's really fun and I think it's worth checking out. Back to the Huckleberry. It's a gun that's developed a bit of a cult following in Destiny 2's history. Huckleberry truthers, as they've come to be known, love many different things about this interesting SMG. First of all, the most noteworthy feature has always been that it's retained the original damage values of Rampage from vanilla Destiny 1. If you weren't playing back then, Rampage used to deal a lot more damage. It gave 20, 41, or 66% for 1, 2, or 3 stacks respectively. These days, Rampage only gives 10%, 21%, or 33%. Well, at least that's true for all the other guns featuring Rampage, but the Huckleberry has kept its original Rampage damage profile, which has made it very popular for players who want that juicy damage boost. Unfortunately for PvP players though, the buffed up Rampage damage only applies in PvE. In the Crucible, you're only going to get the standard Rampage damage values, but in PvE it also gets the damage boost from being an exotic primary weapon, so it's certainly no slouch there. Of course, Rampage isn't all this gorgeous SMG has going for it. We've already briefly mentioned the reload animation, but let's just take one more look at this thing. Seriously, whoever at Bungie designed this animation definitely deserves a raise. Although, you might not even need to reload it very often if you're a good shot, because the intrinsic perk Ride the Bull partially refills the magazine on kill, and if you happen to have the exotic catalyst completed, the entire magazine will get refilled on kill. Beyond the auto reload, the rate of fire also increases as you hold the trigger down, so you can clearly see the appeal. We have an SMG that gets a huge damage boost from kills, those kills reload the magazine, and meanwhile your DPS is increasing just from holding down the trigger. Plus you look awesome anytime you actually need to reload. It's a pretty great combination. Beyond this, you have ricochet rounds, which is one of the best second column perks in the game. Fluted barrel and short action stock both give a ton of bonus handling, and it has a recoil direction stat of 100. Before the changes in Season 17, it had one of the lower zoom stats of only 13, but this season it actually got bumped all the way up to 15 to make it more competitive. If you didn't know already, the zoom stat on a weapon is really important in Destiny because it directly scales the range stat. The higher zoom you have, the more benefit you're getting from that range. Huckleberry belongs to the 750 RPM archetype, which means it has a very fast optimal time to kill, but the catch is that you're going to need to be very accurate to reach that time to kill, possibly even needing 100% headshots depending on the resilience level. The saving grace though is that it also has a very competitive body shot time to kill. So with all this going for the Huckleberry, what's not to like? Well, unfortunately, that would be the still pretty mediocre range stat. Despite the increase in zoom, we still only have a range stat of 53. This puts the effective range in PvP somewhere around 20 meters. And sure, this is a big boost compared to last season. Previously, it would only reach somewhere around 17 meters before experiencing damage drop-off. When we're talking about a weapon type that's directly competing with shotguns, fusions, sidearms, and melees, any little bit of extra range makes a huge difference. It's the difference between cleanly getting a kill or getting double meleeed or burned to death by Lord of Wolves. You really want to play at the max edge of your effective range with an SMG. That's the sweet spot where you're dealing a lot of damage quickly, but you're staying mostly out of the instant kill ranges from your enemies. And this is where the problem really starts to set in. Let's take a look at some of the competition that the Huckleberry has to face this season. I think it makes sense to first look at the kinetic options, and the closest legendary relative to the Huckleberry is the Extraordinary Rendition. This can also get Rampage, it has the same zoom stat, It has a clean sight and it can get a max range stat of 77. That equates to about 4 extra meters of range in game, which is quite a bit more than the Huckleberry has to offer. Again, this might not seem like a ton, but when you're talking about close range weapons, every meter really starts to matter. Plus, the Extraordinary Rendition doesn't take up your exotic slot, so you're free to run anything that you want alongside it, like a Cloud Strike, Duality, or Lord of Wolves. Actually, maybe don't run Lord of Wolves, because I think we already have enough of those running around in the Crucible. If we stray away from the aggressive frames, the unobtainable Friction Fire is also an extremely good SMG. When you see this perk pool, you're mostly going to be looking at something like Killing Wind and Rampage, but for the sake of comparison, let's not also forget that Field Prep exists for those almost instantaneous reloads. In essence, if you go for the Friction Fire, you're sacrificing a little bit of kill time for the massive gain in range. Speaking of weapons that are no longer obtainable, the Multi-Mach from Iron Banner is still a great option. It didn't actually lose a ton of range after the conversion from a 17 zoom to a 15 zoom with the Model 8 sight. The perk Iron Reach really helps it stay competitive in the range department, and the lightweight frame is an excellent bonus. Over in the energy slot, we have Borrowed Time. The unique thing about this SMG is that it comes with a 15 zoom scope by default, and it also can get rangefinder in the third column. Well, I guess theoretically it can roll that way, but good luck playing enough Gambit for the perfect roll. If you get the maximum 70 range roll combined with rangefinder, you can absolutely melt players at ranges just shy of 25 meters. It's kind of funny to me how Bungie nerfed the Multi-Mach hoping to level the RNG playing field, and then they've effectively made Borrowed Time one of the best SMGs in the game, except that your RNG playing field this time is now Gambit. Of course, also in the same archetype is maybe the most slept on primary in Destiny history, the Teraba. I really don't know why this thing isn't seen more often in PvP, but in hindsight, maybe it's a good thing. The Teraba is a great SMG at base with around 22 meters of effective range, and with the Ravenous Beast perk active, it's far and away the best SMG in the game. I guess not that many players acquired it from the Crown of Sorrow raid back in the day, and they probably aren't willing to grind out enough Spoils of Conquest to buy it from the kiosk in the tower. Trust me though, if you don't have this thing yet, you really need to go get it. It's hands down one of the best weapons in all of Destiny for PvP. The kill time with Ravenous Beast active is just ludicrous, and it's really not even all that hard to proc with the passive playstyle that everyone loves to showcase in PvP these days. Just poke a little bit at enemies while you're building towards the perk and then activate it and melt everyone in sight. Also in the energy slot, we have another top tier SMG, the Shayera's Wrath. This one has been a beast ever since it was first added to the Trials loot pool. It can still reach about a 28 meter max range this season, which is the best SMG range in the game. Seriously, the difference between a 20 meter Huckleberry fighting against a 28 meter Shayera's is just not even close. When I was getting footage for this video, I can't even tell you how many times I simply got outranged fighting against SMGs with better range while using my Huckleberry. Even if your recoil control is absolutely perfect, you're probably still going to die just based on the damage fall off. And remember, the range stat doesn't only impact your damage numbers, it also affects how sticky the aim assist cone feels at further ranges. This makes weapons like Shayera's feel super easy to use at mid-range and the Huckleberry feel almost impossible. So clearly the Huckleberry has some stiff competition this season, but that's not to say that you should never use it. It seriously packs some firepower if you can get within its optimal range and start stacking up Rampage. If you're dead set on making Huckleberry work in your loadout, here's some tips that might help you get the most out of it. First of all, if you're going to use the Huckleberry, I think it really only makes sense to be playing a 6v6 game mode. There's not much logic taking such a short-range SMG into any endgame 3v3 activities. For example, in Trials of Osiris, the rounds are usually decided by who gets the first pick, so the difference between getting 1 kill and getting 3 consecutive kills isn't really all that big. And of course, your opponents are more aware that their lives are actually valuable, so they're not going to let you get that initial kill so easily to get the chain going. If you're playing something like Control or Iron Banner, then the Huckleberry can really shine. If you're playing on a Warlock, Blink can be a really fun choice to close the gap. Plus you can get it rolling with Devour so that each kill also heals you and helps keep that streak going. If this sounds like something up your alley, check out my recent video on the Blink Voidwalker playstyle. On a Hunter, one interesting idea could be to use the Foe Tracer exotic helmet. Remember how we mentioned that 100% accuracy requirement to reach the optimal time to kill? Well, Foe Tracer deals increased damage to weakened targets, so it can add just a little bit of leniency which the 750 RPM SMGs desperately need. We tested it in-game and found that if your last hit is a body shot instead of a headshot, you'll still live at 5 resilience but die at 4 or lower against the Huckleberry. Also, don't forget that the Foe Tracer now gives a plus 20 airborne effectiveness stat. Huckleberry also comes with a monstrously high 33 base airborne effectiveness stat according to light.gg, and increasing this to 53 makes Huckleberry incredibly accurate in air even without an Icarus mod. Of course, you can also enjoy the Foe Tracer's benefits with your other weapons too. I mean, those wall hacks make the game pretty easy. And finally on Titan, Peacekeepers are basically mandatory if you're going to use the Huckleberry. Being yet another perfectly balanced exotic for Titans, it desperately needed just another ridiculous benefit to SMGs, so Bungie decided that the Peacekeepers need to give SMGs a plus 40 stat for their airborne effectiveness. I think you can probably connect the dots on this one. Peacekeepers give you a super slippery strafe, which lets you quickly adapt your playstyle to fit the situation. In plain terms, the Peacekeepers are just disgusting and you should definitely use them with the Huckleberry. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe because one of the next videos coming really soon on the channel is going to be a full tier list ranking every single SMG in Destiny 2. In the meantime, I think you'd also really enjoy my video on how to play most effectively with SMGs featuring one of the best SMG players in Destiny history. It's the video on the top right of your screen and also linked in the description.